Adam Walsh. Every Floridian knows his name. I grew up knowing his name because I was born shortly before he was taken. In the summer of 1981, a 6-year-old boy vanished from a Florida mall in broad daylight. What followed was a search that ended in tragedy, a homicide investigation marked by hard questions and missing evidence, and a case that would forever change how America thinks about missing children. I'm Tim, and this is True Crime Unchained. On July 27, 1981, Reve Walsh took her 6-year-old son Adam to the Sears store at the Hollywood Mall in Hollywood, Florida. She left him in the toy department area while she shopped nearby, and when she returned, Adam was gone. That detail alone is what makes this case so unsettling. Adam didn't disappear from a lonely road or a back alley. He vanished from a busy shopping mall in the middle of the day, in a place where families are supposed to feel safe. The early moments of the disappearance, they were chaotic. Reporting says that a security guard told a group of children to leave the area, and that may have separated Adam from his mother just before he disappeared. That small moment, routine instruction in a crowded store, may have been the last point at which Adam was seen alive. In the beginning, the Walsh family and store staff searched immediately, and police were called after Adam couldn't be found. At that point, it was still a missing child case, and the hope was that he might be found quickly, but the hours passed, and then the days, and the case began to move in a much darker direction. On August 10, 1981, two fishermen found Adam's severed head in a canal off the Florida Turnpike. It was more than 100 miles away from Hollywood, Florida. And that discovery changed the case completely. Adam was no longer just missing. He'd been murdered. His body was never recovered, and that made the investigation far more difficult to reconstruct with certainty. Without the body, investigators were left with an incomplete picture of the crime. They had to work from witness statements, early observations, and then later confessions. That's a major reason the case has never felt as cleanly resolved as people might want it to be. The broad timeline was clear enough. Adam disappeared on July 27th, and police later concluded that he died the same day. But the deeper questions remained. Who took him? Where did it happen? And what evidence could actually be trusted? Those questions would follow this case for decades. The early investigation didn't begin with a clear suspect or a clear motive. Police explored multiple possibilities, including people connected to the family. One early person of interest was Jim Campbell, a family friend. Investigators considered whether he may have had motive tied to the Walsh family, but that theory never led to charges. That early uncertainty is important. It shows that the case was not solved quickly through one obvious lead. It was basically just a messy investigation from the start. Then there was also the problems with the physical evidence. Later reporting says that some material was lost or couldn't be used, which limited what, future investigators could do with the case. That kind of loss is devastating in any murder investigation, but especially one involving a child and a high-profile public search. So when people talk about the Adam Walsh case as if it was always a solved mystery, that's just too simple. The case was built in pieces, and some of those pieces were missing from the very beginning. Otis Toole became the central suspect after confessing in 1983, while already in custody on unrelated crimes. I've heard his name pronounced Otis. I've also heard it pronounced Otis, but for the sake of the podcast, we're just going to call him Toole. According to later reporting, He first told an investigator on October 10th, 1983, that he'd kidnapped a boy from Florida Mall and killed him. Hollywood police later interviewed him on October 19th, 1983, and he confessed to killing Adam Walsh. Toole then gave investigators a version of events. He identified a bus bench near the Sears as the place where he first saw Adam. He said he lured Adam away with candy, and he also said he killed him with a machete. Police later said that broad account fit the autopsy in general terms, but the confession wasn't perfect, and that's the problem. Toole also gave incorrect details. He misdescribed Adam's hair and clothes. He falsely claimed that Henry Lee Lucas was involved. Lucas was in jail at the time, so that part of Toole's story was just a fucking lie. And that's why Toole remains such a difficult figure in this case. He was capable of saying things that sounded specific and detailed, but he was also capable of lying and exaggerating and contradicting the known facts. He'd already built a reputation for making confessions that didn't hold up. Many of his admissions about other murders were later viewed as false or unsupported. So when he confessed to Adam Walsh, investigators had a reason to take him seriously, but the public and investigators had a reason to remain skeptical. Toole also claimed to know where Adam's body had been buried. He took them there, and no remains were recovered. That failure is one of the biggest reasons this case still leaves people uneasy. Before we continue with this story, let's talk about something a little lighter. Today's episode is brought to you by Giggles on Garment, my very own t-shirt company. I designed them myself. They're great for a laugh or a conversation starter. Get yours today. Henry Lee Lucas is part of this story because he and Toole were linked through crime and reputation. The two men met in Jacksonville and later drifted into a criminal partnership that became infamous in true crime history. They were both homeless for stretches of time, they were both violent, and they're both willing to tell detective stories that often couldn't be verified. That combination made them one of the strangest and most disturbing, criminal pairings of the era. Reports and later retellings described them as committing crimes together in various places as they moved around the country, but the problem is that many of those claimed crimes were never solidly proven, and both men made sweeping admissions that went far beyond what the evidence could support. Lucas, in particular, became known for taking credit for huge numbers of murders that later collapsed under scrutiny. I think it was something between 152 or 200 murders that this guy confessed to. And then Toole, he followed a similar pattern of telling investigators dramatic stories that often shifted or just completely fell apart. In the context of the Adam Walsh case, Toole falsely claimed Lucas was with him during the abduction and killing. Lucas was in jail, but that false claim tells you a lot about the way Toole operated. He mixed real details with false ones, and that made it extremely difficult to know where truth ended and invention began. Their broader criminal history also matters because it created a cloud over multiple investigations. The idea that these two men were responsible for murders across the country was fueled by their own statements more than by hard evidence in many cases. That's why serious investigators and true crime audiences have to treat their claimed joint crimes with caution. For the Adam Walsh story, the key point is simple. Toole and Lucas were connected. They likely committed crimes together. When it comes to Walsh, the Lucas connection doesn't prove anything by itself, and Toole's false claim about Lucas being present only adds more doubt to an already complicated case. Police later examined the Cadillac Toole said he had been driving. They found blood on the floorboards and removed the carpeting. Investigators also found a machete tied to the car's sale history that had traces of blood on it. What that has to do with the sale history, I don't know. That's weird. That evidence helped strengthen the suspicion around Toole, but it still didn't create modern forensic certainty. DNA testing was not available in the same way it is today, and some evidence was lost or it was just later couldn't be used. In December 2008, Hollywood police announced that they had concluded Toole was the killer and officially closed the case. That was the official law enforcement conclusion, but it was still based on a combination of confession, corroboration, and incomplete physical evidence, rather than a perfect scientific match. And now we get to the legacy of John Walsh. John Walsh was Adam's father, and Adam's death changed John's life permanently. He became the tip of the spear for missing and exploited children. He later started hosting America's Most Wanted, and his work helped bring missing child cases into the national spotlight. Reve Walsh lived through every parent's worst nightmare and spent the rest of her life carrying out the weight of what happened to Adam. While John Walsh became the more, public face of the family's advocacy, Reve remained an essential part of the story, and she was the person who was there in those first terrifying moments where Adam disappeared. She has generally kept a lower public profile than John, but the loss of her son shaped her life just as deeply. The tragedy didn't just change one father, it changed both parents forever. That part of the story matters because it's the reason Adam Walsh is still remembered even far beyond Florida. His case became part of the national child protection conversation. His name helped shape public awareness, reform efforts, and the way law enforcement and the public respond when a child goes missing. This is what makes this case so powerful and so painful. It's not only the story of a murdered kid, it's the story of a family that was shattered, an investigation that struggled with evidence and credibility, and parents who turned loss into a mission that literally changed the country. The Adam Walsh case is one of those stories that never really leaves you. A child vanished from a mall, a family spent years fighting through grief and uncertainty, a suspect with a long history of lies gave investigators a confession that was partly useful and then, partly suspect. And then in the aftermath, one family turned tragedy into national action. That's why this case still matters. Not because every question has been answered, but because it shows how fragile truth can be when evidence is damaged, witnesses are limited, and the person at the center of the story is a proven fucking liar. Well, guys, that's all I have on this case today. I'm Tim, and this has been True Crime Unchained. Let's discuss this case. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Share with your other true crime friends, and let's talk. If you want more deep dive true crime cases like this, I have 11 more episodes. I'm Tim, and filming from Southwest Florida. Peace.